Morning, everybody, and welcome to Hey Coach Tony. I'm your host, Tony Fiorino. Every Saturday at 9 a.m., we tackle the hottest topics in youth sports. As always, we like to take your calls and hear what you've got to say. So we've already opened up the studio lines at 855-HEY-COACH. That's 855-439-2622. You can also feel free to follow along and live chat with me during the show on our Facebook page. Just go to www.heycoachtony.com, where you can also listen live. Hey, I hope you didn't miss me too much while I was enjoying Thanksgiving with my family, or should I say tried to enjoy Thanksgiving with my family. If you're like me, you were vomiting turkey and sweet potato pie all afternoon and evening because of the outlandish behavior of guys like Ndamukong Suh, who not only solidified his reputation as a dirty player, but also clearly illustrated his lack of intelligence this week when he actually had the audacity to appeal his decision to the NFL. Now, if that weren't enough, the rest of the NFL certainly did its best to follow suit and show us lousy examples of professional athlete role models. This past weekend, Stevie Johnson, wide receiver of the Buffalo Bills, absolutely disgraced himself, his team, and the entire NFL when he did an end zone dance and imitated Jets wide receiver Plaxico Burress by pretending to shoot himself in the leg, a la Plaxico in a nightclub some years ago. A truly tasteless gesture. It landed him a $10,000 fine. Now, you think our heroes of the gridiron were done with that? Well, not even close. Oakland Raiders linebacker Rolando McClain was arrested just yesterday after he pulled a gun on a man, held it to his head, while the man pleaded for his life. And above all this, when he was being taken in, he smiled ear to ear for the cameras. And last but certainly not least is our buddy Deshaun Jackson of the Philadelphia Eagles, who this past week put forth an effort against the Patriots that I guess can only be described as, I guess I can say half-assed on the radio, half-assed at best. Truly one of those football weekends when a dad can sit with his kids and go over life lessons. Well, anyway, the whole weekend made me sick, and I'm hoping we get a chance to go through all of these because in studio today is someone that most of you have heard me talk about on the show in the past. When it comes to football coaches, high school coaches in general, but specifically high school football coaches, there is one man who is widely regarded as the best in the business, and many, including myself, will argue probably the best ever. Whenever I speak to football coaches throughout the tri-state area, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, they all talk about the great ones, and then they always leave room for one name that stands above the rest in a category all by himself. And I'm speaking, of course, about the legendary Tony DeMatteo. Tony is somebody that I met, it was just over a year ago when Tony first appeared on my show when I was down in Westchester County. And I'm happy to say that I've gotten to know Tony. I've gotten to watch him shape the lives of many young men on and off the field. I've spoken to former players of his, ranging from men who are in prison to Jimmy Kennedy, former Penn State great, who's currently playing defensive tackle for the New York Giants, and even to guys like Colonel Ronald Guerin, who is an astronaut with NASA. So Tony has gotten guys across the whole board. But most importantly, I'm very happy to say that I've become friends with this truly amazing man. And I am very proud to have him on the show with me. Tony, good morning. Welcome to the show. How are you doing this morning?
Thank you, Tony. It's great to be here.
Well, listen, with Tony in studio, it is very hard for me to talk about anything negative. So I'm going to hold off on talking about the NFL bozos for a little bit. But I will share with you, Tony is someone who is very sought after as a speaker, as a mentor, as a coach. So I'm sure there are those of you who have plenty of questions out there. If you do, by all means, we're going to open up the studio lines. And if you want to talk about Ndamukong Suh or Stevie Johnson or Deshaun Jackson or any of that stuff, feel free to call us in the studio at 855-HEY-COACH. That's 855-439-2622. Post it up on the Facebook page, whatever. We'll address whatever questions you may have. But getting back to Tony, I tell the story a lot to people who care to hear, and maybe even those who don't care to hear. When I first heard of Tony DeMatteo was when Tony came to my hometown to take over the football program at Somers High School in New York. And Tony came in with a certain amount of fanfare, to the point where I thought to myself, what is the big deal about this guy? So anyway, when I finally had a chance to meet Tony, one of the first things he said to me when I said, let's talk a little bit about you, let's talk about coaching. One of the first things you said to me, Tony, was, and I'm pretty much quoting, he said, "Hey, Tony, idiots like you young guys, you think that winning is the measurement of a great coach. When you grow up, you start to understand that winning is the result of great coaching, not the measurement of a great coach." Well, once I got over the initial shock of the idiots like you comment, I realized that Tony DeMatteo was somebody that I could certainly learn an awful lot from. And learn I have. Now, Tony, there are a lot of coaches that are listening this morning. There are some guys that are, like the Lou Marinellis and the guys that you know for here in Connecticut, down to the guys that are just breaking through. And these aren't just football coaches. What would be a great piece of advice, a good general piece of advice that you would give to a younger coach that's looking to make his or her mark on young kids?
Well, it's always been American to win, and you have to stress winning. I think if a parent, a child came home and, got a 50 in the math class, they wouldn't be too happy about that. But winning at all costs, never. And I think that sometimes we stress winning too much and not in developing a kid to become a better person. And that's very important to me, because 4% of all the kids who play any sport in this country will even make a college team. So what are you doing for the other 96%? So you want them to have a great experience as a player, and it doesn't have to just be football. It can be any sport, and learn something from that sport, something educational that's going to help them later on in their life. And I really don't think you should measure a coach, with his winning and losing record. The way a coach should be measured is what their kids do 10 or 15 years after they leave the coach.
Or in some cases, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later, in some cases 30, 40 years after they leave your program. Tony and I were talking before we got on the air about one of his former players, in fact, his very first captain that he ever had. And it's an amazing story. I'm going to touch on it in a minute. And I think as we go through the hour this week, you're going to realize that coaches like Tony DeMatteo certainly have an impact in the 4 brief years that he has the kids on the field. But the most impressive thing about coaches like Tony is the impact he has on these kids' lives as they move forward and become men, and in some cases, as they become old men. And we're going to get back to that in a second. For those of you who have questions for Tony, it's 855-HEY-COACH. One of the things I think is a real testament to the kind of guy Tony is this. When I first planned on having Tony join me on the show, I told him he could bring along somebody to join us in studio. And joining us in studio this morning is a young man by the name of David Arturi. And I'm going to introduce David in just a second. But, Tony, when I asked you to bring somebody along, I figured maybe you'd bring one of your sons who coach football. I thought maybe you'd bring one of your assistant coaches along. Thought maybe even that beautiful wife of yours might be a guest in studio today, which, by the way, I don't know what kind of bet that poor lady lost. I mean, I thought my wife settled, but in any event, if Miss D, if you're listening, beautiful lady, I have a little tiny crush on you. We'll talk about that later. But the fact of the matter is, you bring a high school senior with you. This young man, Dave Arturi, and I know he's a very talented football player. He's one of the very few 4-year varsity players that you've had. But there's got to be something special about this kid for you to bring him along. So first, let me introduce to the show Dave Arturi. Dave, welcome to the show. How you doing this morning?
Hey, Tony. Thanks for having me here.
Pleasure is all mine. For Coach D to speak as highly of you as he does means I wanted to have you here. Tony, of all the people you could have brought along, why'd you pick David?
David is everything I believe a student athlete should be. Kids get a lot of positive things happening to him in the program. David's been with me since he was a freshman. He's had some injury issues, and maybe he didn't win the awards that he should have won if he stayed healthy, but he learned the lesson. And the lesson that he learned is that, he's going to be very successful in whatever he decides to do with his life. And that's what's most important to me. He's a terrific student. He was a great captain. He's been with me since he was in the 9th grade. He's one of the few kids I would bring up as a freshman, and he's just everything I believe a football player should be.
And coming from a guy, David, just so you know, coming from a guy who coached Jimmy Kennedy in high school, and a guy who is, spends half his year floating around in space on behalf of our country, that's a pretty serious statement. Now, David, I got to ask you. I'm assuming you played some football before you got to high school?
Yeah, I started about the 5th grade.
Okay, so you've had plenty of coaches in football.
Right.
What makes Tony DeMatteo different than the other coaches that you've had?
I mean, you really can't even begin to talk about how much he knows about the sport to begin with, but as he touched upon, he doesn't focus on winning and losing. He doesn't care if we win states, if we get knocked out. What he cares about is seeing all of his players grow and become successful, and I think that's what really stuck to me the most, because as much as I like winning, as much as the next guy, but we all know that your future is what matters the most. And Coach D gets that, and he's always looking out for us. He always has our best interest in hand, and I can't compare him to any other coach.
And you're not alone. Now, I will throw a little correction in there. Tony's the best there is. He cares about winning. I think what makes Coach D really exceptional is he always clarifies that statement. It's not about winning and losing at all costs.
Right.
Because I've been to practice. I know Coach D wants you guys to win.
Right.
I've heard practice. Coach D likes to win, I'd say more than the next guy. But again, the perspective of, listen, the kids who I think Somers does a better job than schools in its class of having kids go on and play in college. Quite a few of your guys go on and play in college. But let's face it, not a lot of NFLers are going to be coming out of Somers High School. We know that. Let's hope that isn't the case, but, realistically speaking, Coach D has told me things that, he heard and from guys like Joe Paterno. What was Joe's favorite quote was, I think, what did he say? There are more doctors and lawyers who came through my football program than NFL players. And, Coach D, while you guys, I'll give you the same line Coach D gave me. Idiots like you think that football is all there is in life when you're playing. What you don't realize is it's a foundation of what you're going to do for your future. Right. And watching Tony shape the lives of these young kids is a real great shining example of teaching these kids life lessons through the sport. It's not the sport in and of itself, and this is just it's an outstanding program that Tony has run, and we're going to continue to talk about all this stuff. By the way, if you have not seen, there's a documentary that was done on, I hate to say the life and career because Tony, God willing, will be coaching for another 100 years. But up until I think about 2005, a filmmaker followed Tony around and documented his life and career up to that point. If you haven't seen this documentary, you really, if you're a coach or a sports parent and you haven't seen this film, you're making a monumental life mistake. It's called DiMatteo, Lessons Beyond the Field. And TJ and I will pop this in, once or twice a year just to get a refresher on it. And it really talks about all the different lives that Tony has touched. And this is talking about people who coached underneath you, who've gone on to be head coaches somewhere else. These are the buddies you grew up with, that whole Yonkers crowd. It is your former players. And when I say former players, it's not just, everyone talks about Jimmy Kennedy. There are guys who are still walking around the neighborhoods of Yonkers who just grin ear to ear when they talk about Coach DiMatteo and the impact that he had on their lives. Those are the kind of things that you simply cannot replace. I want to remind everybody that in studio this week is our athlete of the week, who is David Arturi, who is a 4-year starter for Somers. I believe he's a tight end and a linebacker.
Yep.
Matter of fact, we were just watching the Rye game last night. We came up with a great big sack, blew it up, and caused a fumble. Fun watching you play. But more importantly, a terrific student athlete. The whole town of Somers is I'm sure, listening this morning and very supportive of you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
When we get back, we're going to talk more about Tony DeMatteo. And joining us in studio is also the world-famous TJ Fiorino, who may chime in on a little thing here or there with us. You're listening to Hey Coach Tony. Stick around.
Coach Tony.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. You're with Tony Fiorino on Hey Coach Tony. We're joined in studio today by legendary high school football coach Tony DeMatteo, one of his prize student athletes, David Arturi, and last but not least, the one and only TJ Fiorino. TJ, thanks for joining us in studio today. How we doing?
No problem, Dad. I'm doing really well.
Boy, way to throw in the deep radio voice. You got a future, kid. Good job. All right. We're talking with Tony DeMatteo about the ups and downs of high school football and the lessons that all of us coaches can learn as we progress through our career. If any of us are half as successful as Tony has been in the coaching realm, then the world's going to be a better place. But, you know, Tony, I never asked you this, and I want to get your opinion on this. Coaching is never all roses. We know that. You've had plenty of accolades. Tell me a little bit, and tell our listeners a little bit about some of the biggest challenges that you have faced as a coach, with kids, with other coaches, with bad seasons, and how do you deal with that kind of adversity?
Well, you know, if you start at Roosevelt, you know, I think coaching in Yonkers at times is like coaching on Mars. And, you know, there were times that in order to get extra time to practice, they would lock us out of the building, and the janitor would let me lock the door, but I couldn't get out of the building. I had to jump out of a 2-story window. And, you know, we had things like that. You know, you don't have those kinds of things at Somers, but, you know, there are different types of kids at Somers. And I think the people think that kids are different today in terms of their work ethic or their pride. And I don't see that at all. What I see is that their attention span has changed. And it's probably, you know, our fault with all the technology, the video games, watching 5 or 6 shows at the same time. And I used to do a drill for 10 minutes, and the 9th minute, years ago, the kid would be going 100 miles an hour. Now, if you do a drill, the kid will do it twice, and it's like, well, I got that, what's next? So I think, you know, I've had to change the way I approach practice to keep their interest by changing everything up. I used to practice offense on one day, defense the next day. I can't do that now. You have to practice offense and defense the same day. You know, you go, hurry up, come here, do this, do that. Everything's got to be like kind of like a video game. Mm-hmm. So I think the biggest difference of the kids today as years ago is just the attention span. The pride, the drive to be successful, all those great things are still there.
Yeah, I think you're right. The sense of instant gratification that our kids all have, and it's not because they're spoiled. It's just, you know, it's just part of the evolution of society. I mean, I can watch my daughters who will have a video chat going with a friend on their laptop, watching a TV show, and their phone is in their hand texting somebody else. Long term, I don't know how this affects these kids. I mean, if these two knuckleheads are any inclination, then we may be in trouble. But the fact of the matter is that is a tough thing to do. Another thing that's sprouted up more recently, and I think it's kind of prevalent in neighborhoods like ours, is there's a sense of entitlement. And, you know, I know you run a very tight ship. I know a lot of other coaches deal with this sense of entitlement, whether it's the kids who have a private Parisi trainer because mom and dad can afford it, or mom and dad living in a very nice neighborhood. You know, do you see much of that sense of entitlement in your program? Not David Arturi. Let's put him completely to the side. But there are other kids.
Not so much in the program in terms, because I just don't allow it. You know, I just won't deal with it. I think, you know, and I try to make it clear right when the kids come into the program to the parents, you know, what we're trying to accomplish with their kids. And I think there's confusion on why a kid should play a sport. And I think it all started with this year-round training and these sports academies, you know, to go to the next level. Everything's about going to the next level. Well, let me just tell you about the next level. 1% of all the kids who played, and I'm talking about girls and boys, every sport in this country, 1% get a chance for a tryout to make a professional team. And as I stated, only 4% will make a college team. So are we designing our athletic programs to deal with this elite percentage, or are we designing our programs to help every kid that plays the sport? And that's why I play so many kids. I'm sure that all the Monday morning quarterbacks in Somers were questioning why I used 2 quarterbacks.
I did. I didn't know the answer. No, for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, Tony had 2 very comparable quarterbacks this year. And one of them was it Tim Cousins?
Kevin Cousins.
Kevin Cousins, and who was the other kid?
Dylan McGuire.
Dylan McGuire. 2 very good athletes, 2 very good quarterbacks. Normally what happens? you got these knucklehead old school football guys who will say, okay, here's guy A and guy B. Both are fighting for the position at a high school age. The guy who wins in camp, you're the starter. The other guy, you're going to get a couple of snaps a year. I didn't think of it until I heard you speak at the dinner the other night, why it made so much sense. I see two quarterbacks. A lot of people would question that. So outline for us. Why did you use two quarterbacks?
Well, first of all, I've done it about 10 or 11 times in my career. And my feeling is, I am not a professional football coach. I am not a college football coach. I am a high school football coach. And what I think, and I believe a high school football coach is supposed to do, is give a kid a good experience for his life later on. So that's why I play so many kids. Now, certainly the quarterback position it's a tough position to play two kids. And does it cause some problems every so often? I'm sure it does. But to have two kids that are comparable, about the same, to have one sit on the bench all year while the other one plays, I don't think it's right. So regardless of whether it's fullback, linebacker, or quarterback, if I think a kid can go in there and not cause us to be unsuccessful, that if I put him in, there's no way we could win. If I think he's able to perform for me, I'm going to play him. Mm-hmm. And so he gets something more out of the program. The more kids that play, the happier the kids are. And that really happens today, and I think that comes from that thing we would do about entitlement and things like that. It's not about, wow, Somers won. It's about Somers lost, but Johnny Jones was a star. Johnny Jones and Johnny Jones' father and mother and his family, they're very happy. They didn't really care that we lost. So, I think we're getting away from that team thing, and it's more of an individual type of thing, and you can't do that in sports. And that's probably what's the problem with the pros, that they want to direct attention to themselves so that they do stupid things.
And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Now, staying on the topic of playing time, and the reason I say it is because it's the biggest issue in all of youth sports. Number two is so far behind it's almost not even worth talking about, and that is what position does my kid play. Playing time is the one. What other issues, what other factors come into play? Let's stick to the two quarterback scenario. Did you find that maybe one of your quarterbacks was better in a third and long situation? Was there any situational aspects that made one kid different than the other that would dictate some of the playing time and when they would play?
Yeah, that happens, and probably that was correct this year, but I don't go by that. Mm-hmm. I had a sports writer ask me. He says, I see you playing so many kids, and even at the most important part of the game, you have the supposedly backups in. Why were they in? I said, because it was their time. It was their time to be in. And I'm going to just roll with that. It's more important that they get something out of the program. I remember last year we were playing Lakeland, and we had to win the game to get into the playoffs. And we were on their 12-yard line, and there was a pass play that I knew was going to work. And I had a tight end in at the time that had the best hands on the team. And my other tight end had a very rough game the previous week. They blocked an extra point on him. He felt that the game, he cost us the game. I sent that kid in there because I knew the play was going to work. Now, he might have dropped that pass and made me look stupid. I wouldn't really care. But he caught it for a touchdown. And I feel just terrific about that because that really helped that kid.
Well, I was going to say, and that kid is going to remember that. And maybe for the rest of his life. I don't know if that kid is playing college ball right now.
He's playing lacrosse. Jordan DeVito is a terrific boy.
Oh, I know Jordan.
Terrific.
I know Jordan. Jordan's a good kid.
Yep.
All right. Well, I will tell you this. I don't know many other football coaches that would do that. At any level. I'm talking from third grade on up. And, it's what's funny is the majority of people who play football at any kind of serious level in this country is at the high school level. That's really, you're talking about the sheer numbers and the sheer, capacity. That's where it's at. Guys like you keep it in perspective. I watch coaches at the third grade level, and I see them pull their hair out and do backflips on the sideline because they can't contain their anger or nor their enthusiasm, and they really do lose perspective. Paint that scenario the other way around. Jordan has been in that series up until that point, and instead you switch him out because you know that play is going to work and you want the guy with the good hands in there. What most guys don't realize is, forget about the positive impact you had on Jordan. The negative impact you may have had on Jordan had you taken him out of that situation to show you had no faith is something that would carry that kid even further into life. And that's the real shame of the way most guys coach football or any sport. I don't want to pick on football. It's any of the sports. Now, again, we're here with Tony DeMatteo this morning talking about football, and we're taking your calls at 855-HEY-COACH. When we get back, we're going to talk about two things in particular that I find of vital importance. And if you have stories on this, you want to call in. One is going to simply be the way that Coach DeMatteo deals with parents, because let's face it, we all as coaches dread dealing with you parents. Now, I'm a coach and a parent, so I get to say that. But we dread facing you guys as parents because you're irrational. All you care about is your kid, and all you want to do is criticize what we do after it's over and done with. The second thing we're going to talk about when we come back is something that's become epidemic in this country at the high school sports level, and that is hazing. There was just another new story, and I'm not going to do the story because it's just plain gross. But if you're in the mood to Google something called a wet biscuit, it sounds funny, and you know what? It'll change your Google wet biscuit hazing, and it's going to change your life. But when we get back, we're going to talk more with Tony DeMatteo about these life lessons. You're with Coach Tony. Stick around. I'll be right back.
Coach Tony.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. You're with Tony Fiorino this lovely Saturday morning, joined in studio by Coach Tony DeMatteo of Somers High School in Somers, New York. And, Tony, I keep saying it, and Tony doesn't listen to my show very often, so he doesn't gush as much as I do. But I talk about Tony all the time. Whenever I talk about the way a coach should act, I always refer to Tony DeMatteo because of what he's accomplished over his many, many years of coaching. What's it now, 85 years you've been coaching?
Feels like that.
One of the things I really respect most about Tony DeMatteo is that he has literally taken his philosophies and he is impacting something that has been just such a negative, horrible thing for so many years in scholastic sports. I'm talking about, of course, hazing. Tony did something revolutionary, and I think it goes back to Roosevelt, right?
Yes.
All right, going back to Roosevelt and doing what you did in that school system with this program was nothing short of miraculous. It is carried with him over to Somers, and the kids have a tremendous impact on this. Instead of hazing or allowing hazing or even frowning on hazing, Tony turned it on its ear. Tony, I'm not going to do a good enough job explaining it. Could you please walk us through the program that you put in place that has basically eliminated hazing from any school that you're going to be in?
Yes, I started this at Roosevelt and I brought it to Somers. We have a mentoring program where I assign a senior to an incoming freshman to just watch over the kid. They help him with his plays. When school starts, they don't know how to open their locker, they forget their combination, they don't know where they're going, and to just basically, be like a big brother. And the reason I like the program so much, first of all, I've never believed in hazing, I've never believed in teasing. I just was raised that way that you shouldn't do those kind of things, and it makes it easier for a kid going from the 8th grade in junior high to a brand new high school, and it just makes his life a little easier. I don't think a kid going from 8th to 9th grade into a different school gets anything out of the extra pressure of hazing. But in this day and age, when everyone is so concerned about rights and privileges, sometimes we forget to teach responsibility. So I think it's more important, the mentoring program is more important for the seniors to learn that, Emerson said, knowing one life has breathed easier because you have lived, that's what success is. And I think there's some resistance in the beginning, but once these seniors learn and understand the importance of a mentoring program, it has a miraculous effect on them, and that's what I like the most about it.
Now, again, as a dad of a freshman, TJ is a freshman at Somers, I looked at it and said, gee, how cool is that? Because seeing it through the eyes of the freshman, like you said, and football, by the way, is a very different scenario because the football players actually will, they're starting out. The 8th graders get this whole new experience of being in high school. Well, an 8th grade football player then gets this whole new experience of being in and around the locker room with the seniors, and it could be a harrowing, horrible, life-changing experience if a kid gets hazed. So I look at it and say, how cool is that? that a kid will actually, instead of having a negative experience, it's quite the opposite. My son came home first week of high school and, said, I love high school. And I said, why? And I gave me two reasons. One, a lot of hot girls walking around high school, great. The other is he felt like he owned the place because instead of walking around not sure who you know and who you talk to, he was mingling with the upperclassmen. So he actually had a leg up instead of a real major step back. Now, what's really important that you said is it is more important. And TJ, when you become a senior, you're going to realize that making that freshman's life easier is going to stay with you a lot longer than breathing easier as a freshman because a senior was helping you. And that's what Coach D is doing. And I'm not the only guy who loves this program. Apparently, Somers Schools loves the program so much that they actually initiated a senior mentoring program throughout the school. And David, who happens to be a senior, is part of that program. And matter of fact, he is one of the senior mentors to TJ on the Somers High School side of things. David, tell us a little bit about that other program and how it crossed over from football.
I mean, Coach D started the program when he came to Somers, and then it just got such positive feedback that one of my teachers, Miss Schultz, actually brought it into our program, and now it's an elective. We meet every other day, and what we do is you get 2 peer leaders, 2 seniors or 2 upperclassmen. They get assigned to a group of kids. And they have a meeting with this group of kids every 6 days, so, like about every other week. And from there, you just talk to them, you try to teach them lessons. It's like Coach D said, it's like a big brother sort of thing. So you just try to look out for them. You don't want them to have any trouble. They're always there for you. We like to hear what they have to say. As much as we try to teach them, we learn a lot from them. So it's just a good experience for everyone.
Great. Well, TJ's learned some very valuable lessons. The cave, the bat cave, what's that? Did you learn that? All the Somers seniors are giggling right now. Yeah, guess what? Coach Tony knows about the cave, guys. So watch your step. But again, I think it really comes back to when we're hearing about all these horrible stories about hazing, and just this past year there were 5 or 6 that just turn your stomach. And I don't just mean because of the actual physical acts. I mean just the whole nature. And as a parent, you put yourself in the position of the kid who gets picked on. You put yourself, you try to instill in your kids. Imagine you're the kid that got hazed. Imagine you're the kid who got picked on, and it really helps us internalize that. So, Tony, just one more time, hats off for an amazing initiative that you brought into the lives of all these young kids. Now, to switch to something else that all of us coaches have to deal with. We hate it. We don't want to do it. If it wasn't such an issue, I'd be out of a job. And that is, as a coach, the dynamics between coach and parent can be nightmarish. That's just a fact. You tend, and again, a lot of it is because of the respect that you've established for yourself over the years. I like to say people can either demand respect or command respect. Those who demand respect very rarely get it. Those like Tony DeMatteo who command respect by showing great examples, that follows you kind of for the rest of your life. But at the same time, whether it's now or last year or, like I said, 70 years ago when you started out coaching, you, I'm sure, had to develop a philosophy for dealing with parents. Could you tell us a little bit about that relationship and how you manage it?
I think the most important thing is you have to be honest. You can't sugarcoat anything. I think the worst thing a coach can do is try to talk to a kid to convince him to play his sport that he's coaching because he has a chance to get a scholarship, or that he's a big kid, he can go all the way and make millions of dollars. I think that I try to be as honest as I can. We have college coaches. Dave has talked to 10 different schools already. We have schools coming in to talk to the kids who can go on and play into college. But you have to make everyone aware of what an elite group that is. And, I gave you those percentages. When only 4% in this country are going to make a college team, that isn't what the program is about. And sometimes when you play a lot of kids, it over the long haul, it could affect your winning and losing percentage. I'm not really sure, but it's not that important where they're going to get. I want every kid to get something out of a program. You were at the dinner last night. The last award we gave out, the major award of the night, was the 2 kids that won the Scout Team Award. So we just try to elevate every kid's, his personality and how he feels about himself. And even if a kid's not playing, and we play a lot, and the kids that are not playing, we try to do something for them. So I think the most important thing is to be honest and let parents know, you're not supposed to be chasing the American dream is a college education. Go and get a great job someday. And to have two dreams is fine. You want to be a professional athlete, if that's your dream, fine. Have another more realistic dream in place, and that dream should be a college education.
Yeah, before I started doing the radio show, and I had to tone my act down a little bit, and I would give speeches to parent groups at schools, I used to come up with all these corny lines. One of them was, if your kid, because most parents think you should squash the kid's dream, save them the heartache, don't let them think they should go be a professional athlete. I tell them just the opposite. If TJ thinks, and when he was younger, TJ thought that Derek Jeter's only job in life was to keep shortstop at Yankee Stadium warm until he was ready to take it over. And what I would simply tell him is, you know what kind of hard work you're going to have to put in? Great. We call it packing a reserve chute. Anybody who skydives would never jump out of an airplane with only one parachute in their pack. There's always a backup chute. So we teach parents, pack a reserve chute. So great, TJ. Nothing wrong with being the shortstop for the Yankees and being the smartest guy in the major leagues. Get your education. Understand there's going to be something you're going to follow up on, and those things are just absolutely vital. Tell me a little bit about the communication between yourself and the parents. Do you have set rules about when you talk to them, when you don't talk to them, anything like that?
No. I have an open door. Any parent that wants to talk to me, they have to just give me a call. They don't call me on my cell phone because I don't have one. They have to call my office, and I get right back to them. So I don't, we have parent meetings. We'll have a meeting in March, and I'll lay everything out in a general way. But my philosophy has been open door. Any parent that has a problem with anything, if a kid's not, there's over 95 football players in 3 teams, so it's hard to keep track of all of them. And I always let the parents know as soon as there's a school problem, just give me a call. So my philosophy has been open door.
And by the way, that's one of the things that, and I hate to keep picking on TJ, up until this year, every single October, without question, I mean from kindergarten through to 8th grade, we would wait for the inevitable letter that would come home in the backpack talking about how disorganized homeworks would be missing. When we did the parents' meeting at the start of the year, Coach D, in conjunction with the NFL, came up with this great idea. Every football player in Somers is given a planner. Whether the school gives them one or not, Coach D gives them one. And the message was simple day one. If I catch you in the hallway and you don't have your planner, you're dead. If I open up your planner, nothing's written in it, you're dead. I can proudly say that TJ, I don't know if I'm just a lousy dad or you're that good a coach, but TJ, here we are, kid, December, and we have yet to get the envelope in the mail. And I know you owe a lot to that to Coach D, so you can now officially thank him for not being punished.
Thank you, Coach DiMatteo, for not getting me in trouble.
All right, listen, we're going to go to a quick break, and we're going to finish up. We're going to talk some more with Coach D. There's just too much to do here. 855-HEY-COACH, 855-439-2622 is the number here in the studio. By the way, for those of you who are wondering, Jimmy Kennedy was going to join us today. The Giants called a meeting. Jimmy sends his most sincere apologies. He may try to call in for the last segment, but Jimmy, if you're listening, man, I totally understand. All right, so when we get back from break, we'll have more with Coach DiMatteo, TJ, and David. You're with Hey Coach Tony. Stick around.
Coach Tony.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. You're with Hey Coach Tony on ESPN Radio. We are joined today by Coach DiMatteo from Somers High School, as well as David Arturi and TJ Fiorino, 2 of his players. I want to move on to some of the NFL player behavior, but before I do, I just want to kind of make one last statement and one last testament to the system that Tony has created over the years. He talked about 2 of his scout players. Most schools don't even have a scout team, so some guys don't even know what that is. There are players that are dedicated to mimicking the offense and defense of the upcoming opponent's systems. And there are kids who just literally will crash through a wall to make sure they're running the other team's offense flawlessly. And it is an undying debt of gratitude that you owe these scout players. Now, it doesn't mean that the scout players cannot play in the game come Friday night, But it's just, I think the fact that there are kids willing to do that is an amazing testament to you as a coach. In fact, I just learned after the dinner the other night that TJ has elected that regardless of what happens, he's going to come up as a sophomore, even if he has to play scout team. So for a kid to basically say, I know I'm going to get limited playing time, but this is what helps the system progress, I think is really something special. And TJ, good for you, and better for you, Coach D. All right, so I want to get some opinions here from Coach D, because if any of you, like I said, tried choking down your turkey on Thanksgiving, you had some trouble, and you probably hacked some of it up when you watched Ndamukong Suh just make a total disgrace of himself during the Packers game, when he just apparently tried to get up out of the pile using the opposing player's helmet 4 or 5 times to do so, and then when he got up, apparently lost his balance and stomped on an offensive tackle's arm. Suh received a 2-game penalty for this. Some will argue, myself included, that it was way too lenient. What I found, well, you know what? I'm just going to ask Coach D. We all saw the highlights. We all saw what Ndamukong Suh did. What was your reaction when you first saw that thing, when you first saw that transpire?
Well, football, as we all know, it's, dancing is probably a contact sport. Football is a collision sport. It's a very violent sport. And I think that's what's great about kids learning how to play football in high school, because it really tests you learning to control yourself. And I think what Suh did was just terrible. It just showed his lack of control. I think if Detroit was controlling the game, that probably wouldn't have happened. So that's bad. When things are not going right, you have to have yourself on, more control. And I think that, when you have all that equipment on, you're allowed legally to hit someone, and then you have to do that. It was just terrible for the sport.
Well, you say Detroit was not controlling the game. I brought up something to a couple of coaches that I talked to this week, and I want your opinion on it. Not only was Detroit not controlling the game, the Detroit Lions organization is, in my opinion, doing a very poor job controlling Ndamukong Suh. In your opinion, as a true mentor, as a coach, having coached another pretty decent defensive tackle, Jimmy Kennedy, who could probably kill somebody with his bare hands if he chose to do it, do you think that the coaching staff and the administration of a team like the Detroit Lions that has such a ridiculous talent and volatile personality like an Ndamukong Suh, do they have the ability, or even, let's say, the responsibility to control him? In other words, could that behavior have been stopped if he was coached the right way?
That's really hard to say, because first of all, I don't follow pro ball during my season. I don't really know much about Detroit. I know what he did was wrong. I don't know. You can run a very, very tight ship, and something like that could happen because someone just loses their cool. So to say that if they approached it different or treated him differently, I'm not really sure. I don't know how much pro coaches have control over the players with the money involved, the money the players make, and the money that the owners give to the players. That the players might have a better in with the owners than the coaches. I'm not really sure of that whole demographic in terms of how you can control a professional player, how much power a coach really has. So it's really a hard question to answer. The only thing I know is what he did. Not only was wrong, for young kids, it's just wrong for the act was just wrong for anyone to see.
Do you ever worry that some of your players, they see some of this behavior, and it's behavior and it's play? So there's a fine line in football. Do you ever worry that your kids are going to follow some bad examples and develop some bad habits, let's just call them, based on what some of these guys are doing?
Oh, absolutely. I just think that when you become an adult and you're successful, you have a responsibility to give back. I remember when Charles Barkley spit at a kid, and then he said that he doesn't have to be a role model. Parents should be a role model. No, when you're in the public eye, you have to be a role model. You have to give back. That's what this country's all about. So I think that the idea of those kinds of things happen. Hey, we have them happen on the high school level. Kids will lose their cool. The one thing that I would have done as a coach is would have taken him out. Even if it cost the game, just take him out. He's got to come out. You can't have someone acting like that and allow him to continue to play. Now, they threw him out.
Yeah, he got ejected and a 2-game suspension.
But if he didn't get thrown out, I bet you he would have still played.
See, and thank you, because that's what I'm thinking. The NFL can do what they want to do. I think the Lions dropped the ball because a 2-game suspension, granted, they're truly in a playoff hunt. People do believe that Ndamukong Suh missing 2 games may very well cost the Lions their season. Part of me hopes it does. But I got to tell you, I'm disappointed that the Lions didn't step up and say, on top of those 2 games, you're going to sit another game without pay. You say they make a lot of money, then hit them where it hurts, because that was a disgusting act. David, what did you think? I mean, you were somewhere trying to choke down some turkey, and you saw this going on. So what did you think of that whole thing?
I mean, it's just kind of a lot to take in because, every kid out there is like idolizing them, wishing they could be out there playing, and to see something like that happen, it's just like, why do you have to do that? That's really not necessary. Just play the game. Coach always tells us, don't hit him in the face, get up, you have pads on, hit him the next play. And Coach has done a great job of shutting that down because, like, even on the high school level, like Coach said, tempers are flaring, you're in a heated game, you want to hit the other person. But, I mean, he taught us, never to do that, always fight back the right way. And it's just to see that, we're trying to do that. We're trying to be the best we can, try not to get into fight. And there's an NFL player stomping on another guy's face. That's just like, I don't know, it's kind of disappointing.
TJ, what do you think about the 2-game suspension?
I think he should have been penalized more because this is not the first time Ndamukong Suh has done something like this.
Yep,
so
right. He's got a history of this stuff.
Yeah, so I could see if maybe a non-spotlight guy had done this, maybe like Casey Hampton or someone that's not really known for somebody that does this kind of stuff would do that, like a 2-game suspension. But Ndamukong Suh has done this over and over again.
He has repeated incidents of losing his temper and taking cheap shots, and the league has certainly come down on him. But like I said, I don't think the league has come down hard enough. No question about it. Let's talk a little bit about Stevie Johnson. That's the last one because I was watching the Bills play the Jets, and I guess it was still in the first half when Johnson caught that touchdown pass, right?
I'm almost positive it was in the first half.
He caught a touchdown pass, and part of his end zone dance, which I can't stand anyway, was he went guns a-blazing. And because they're playing against the Jets and Plaxico Burress, he fakes shooting himself in the leg. Well, during the course of that game, Stevie Johnson actually shot himself in the foot because... were you watching the game, David?
Yeah,
okay. What was, aside from the fact that the guy did a ridiculously insulting, inappropriate end zone dance, was there anything else that you found interesting? It's a trick question. I hope you get it. Was there anything else you found interesting in that game, specifically as it pertains to Steve?
I mean, what do you mean? I'm trying to figure out what your trick question is here.
It's not really a trick question. TJ, you got a guess?
He dropped a wide open touchdown pass.
Exactly.
I missed that one.
The Jets pull ahead. The Bills are driving down for a game-winning drive, and the ball hits. Sorry to hit you in the hands like that. Guy drops the ball. I was screaming again. My wife wants to buy me a TV that can talk back because I'm screaming at the TV. Catch the ball. Don't worry about the end zone dance. And this guy again embarrassed himself. He embarrassed his team. The NFL threw down a $10,000 fine, which, by the way, not the first time this guy had gotten a fine. Last year, I think he got $15,000 in fines. He mocked the Patriots because I think the Patriots have a Minuteman who, after a touchdown, shoots a rifle and falls back. Well, he did that during one of the games, and then I think he another $5,000 for lifting his shirt. If you remember, he was the guy who showed the message says, "Why so serious?" Listen, I'm sure he's not listening to the show, but if you are, you're a disgrace. How's that? That's my pound of flesh. Unbelievable. Well, listen, I will wrap up by one more time expressing my tremendous gratitude to Tony DeMatteo. Again, if you don't know who this guy is, A, you're obviously not a high school football fan, and B, you're probably living in a closet. Please go get your hands on this documentary. It's called DiMatteo, Lessons Outside the Field. It's the kind of thing, as a coach, it can literally change your life because Tony DeMatteo has done just that. He has changed the lives of people, and like I said, 99.99% of them you've never heard of. For every Ron Guerin that's in space, for every Jimmy Kennedy who's playing for the New York Giants, there are hundreds, literally hundreds of people walking around Yonkers, maybe in your backyard. They all know who he is, and they all owe him something tremendous for the people they've turned out to be. Dave Arturi, I'm going to look for you in another 15 years. TJ, I'll be able to watch you for another 20, but you guys both, though, and you can say it right now, a tremendous debt of gratitude to Coach D. Give it to him before we get out of here.
Yeah, we definitely owe Coach D a lot.
Thank you, Coach DiMatteo.
All right, folks, listen, every Saturday, 9 a.m., tune in to Hey Coach Tony on ESPN Radio. Enjoy the rest of the weekend, everybody.